Okay, we have reincarnation. Again, your book brings so much data to it. We're not living in a Michael Jackson "We Are the World" music video. And the stage is set. In essence, and hope you don't mind if I give away the Gnostic plot, but
Oh,
we
please.
are divine sparks being fed by Archons. We are food for the moon, as Gurdjieff said, and you mentioned in your book. We are Loosh, and we are trapped in, well, in a sort of ranch, right? I mean, to put it very blunt and basic.
You know, the first person to make this observation in modern paranormal research was actually Charles Fort.
He was,
Who
you're right.
in the 1920s said, we're being farmed. We're property, and this is a farm. And, you know, when you read through Robert Monroe's writings, especially his book Far Journeys, and you see how he develops this conception of human energy that can be harvested, which he calls loosh, and the production of this loosh, particularly through adverse and intense emotional states, you know, extreme desire, anguish, deep emotional suffering, trauma. So all these intense emotional states produce this energy that can be harvested, which he calls loosh. So, you know, when you combine Fort's insight with that, you might as well conclude that we're living on a Loosh-Farm, as I put it in Thanosis. And this is an insight that, you know, others have had as well. I mean, Gurdjieff called it something like askonin, some weird word he coined for this energy that's harvested, he believed, by the moon. And that if you don't develop an extremely acute self-consciousness and very self-aware intentionality in life, and you go about life living like a robot, as he put it, you're going to be basically energy harvested by the moon, and not be able to preserve your individuality. So Gurdjieff also had an insight into this. And I put basically Robert Monroe's research and Gurdjieff's, I suppose you could say, theosophical insights, together with also Dr. Carla Turner's abduction research, where many people who are experiencers of the close encounter phenomenon have also reported that the supposed aliens who abduct people are actually harvesting and processing souls. Mm-hmm. And in particular, Carla Turner's patients or subjects, the people who reported close encounters to her, described the inside of some metallic sphere where, you know, soul harvesting and the manipulation of people between death and rebirth was taking place. And I think there's good reason to believe, when we look at, you know, other lines of evidence in the close encounter research, that this place that she's describing is the moon, and that Gurdjieff was onto something when he said that, you know, if we're not careful, we're going to wind up being food for the moon. So I suspect that, you know, in my book Closer Encounters, my tome on UFOs, mm-hmm. I made an extensive argument for why the moon is an artificial satellite. But where I go in Thanosis is to further that argument into a case for the fact that that artificial satellite is filled with psychotronic machinery of some kind, which is involved in the attempted harvesting of energy from souls after death and the processing of people through an afterlife system that basically denies them their own agency in choosing the conditions of their rebirth, and funnels them through this afterlife in a way that predetermines the conditions they're going to be reborn under, including this, you know, afterlife, what do you call it? Life review, the life review that these entities, you know, subject people to in order to then manipulate them or guide them through the guilt and whatever shame that they are subjected to in the course of this afterlife review. So there appears to be this machinery that funnels people from death into rebirth. But what I suggest by the end of Thanosis is that there are also a number of techniques or sort of psychotronic technologies that one can use, abilities that one can cultivate in order to regain more agency in the transition between death and rebirth. And one of the things that comes across clearly in Stevenson's research that's important to remember is that there are plenty of cases where children will remember. His cases predominantly involve children's spontaneous recall of past lives, which is a good way to go about researching this, because you don't wind up with, delusional adults who want to believe that they're the reincarnation of Caesar or Cleopatra, right? These kids have like very raw, sometimes traumatic recollections of their death in a previous life, and they want to be taken back to their previous family, who is identified in a lot of the cases. And so they have no reason to be making this stuff up. And so they're a good, a pool of subjects to work with. And one of the things you see in Stevenson's cases is that plenty of these kids remember the transition between death and rebirth, what happened to them after they left the physical body, and that led to them being reborn as part of another family. And in many of these cases, there's no psychotronic manipulation. They're not dealing with archons, or their souls are not being processed inside the moon or whatever. So these cases show us that the psychotronic control system is not comprehensive. It's not comprehensive, and it's not being run by omnipotent beings.
Right.
Far from it. There's a way to get around them. They're finite, and they can be outsmarted, and ultimately, I think they can be defeated. And so I end the book with techniques that, can become tools to that end.
Yes, for the audience, he's not just like old man, like the Simpsons, old man yelling at the clouds, or old man yelling at the moon. Jason gives plenty of advice. I love this section where you talk, you say, cultivate lucidity in the interlife, train the subtle body, transmute sexual and affective energies rather than broadcast them as food. Interrogate any guide and refuse all unsolicited covenants. Reject the tunnel summons. Remember the Promethean path is disclosure. Aletheia as anamnesis, remembering. Loss of forgetfulness, by which we stop serving as inventory and begin to engineer our own transit through and ultimately beyond the archontic prison. And again, that's just part of the advice and techniques that you give in your book. So this book is a good book. And on the idea of that, they're not supreme, these archons, that it's more like we're in Terry Gilliam's Brazil, or Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Your planet is set for destruction, or something like that. Is where's the story of where's the gentleman here? Was it the Durga Jatav?
Yeah, Durga Jatav.
That's my favorite, and it's so terrifying.
Yeah. So look, these people fuck up all the time, and I like to call them people, the archons. In that way, maybe I'm not so Gnostic, because I actually think that they're kind of part of a Kafkaesque bureaucracy, and they're very fallible, like people. And maybe some of these people want out of this bureaucracy too. I think that's a distinct possibility, that if we succeed in breaking the archontic system, we might actually have some people from the inside collaborate with us if our hand becomes strong enough to make that play. But in any case, the Durga Jatav incident is both amusing and deeply horrifying.
It is.
So this is some poor Hindu who gave up the ghost, I believe, in a hospital. And his family is mourning over him, and he's been flatlined for quite some time. But then he comes back to life. But he comes back to life with these 2 scars across his knees, as if his legs had been severed and reattached. And this is the story that he tells us about what he experienced in the time that he was flatlined. Durga Jatav says he was dragged away to hell by demons. And when he got there, his legs were severed. But immediately after that, the demons who were managing him were informed by their superiors that they had taken the wrong person. And so they had to take Durga, and presumably they're carrying him because, now he can't walk on his own 2 legs. And so they bring him over to this rack of severed limbs, and he has to pick out his own legs so that they can be reattached before they send him back into our realm. And he comes back with these scars, very unmistakable scars across his knees. So what the hell is going on here? Well, it matches up actually quite well with close encounter cases where abductees say they took me by mistake. And the Greys took me, and then they consulted with their superiors, who are in some case Nordics, and they're told that, oh, no, it was the neighbor down the street that you were supposed to take. Get this guy out of here and try to wipe his memory. Okay? So this is consistent across the literature, both of the afterlife and of close encounter cases. And those 2 literatures interpenetrate and overlap in a way that makes it legitimate to conclude that we're dealing with the same entities and the same realm in both alien abductions, so-called alien abductions, and management of souls in the afterlife. So, for example, there are cases where a person will be in the middle of an abduction, and they will see, their uncle that they were particularly close to and fond of. And their uncle is with the Greys. And their uncle gives them some message to bring back to, let's say, their father. Say it's the father's brother, right? Tell your dad I'm all right. Everything's fine here. And, the abductee is wondering what the hell his uncle is doing there, because he presumes his uncle is still alive. Well, he's returned by the aliens. And the next day, they get a phone call at the family's house that the uncle passed away the previous afternoon before the abduction took place. So deceased people are seen in transit together with the Greys by people who are being abducted by the Greys. And one particular case of this in Closer Encounters, but then came back to in Thanosis, is particularly striking, and that's Betty, Andreas, and Luca's abduction, where essentially the Greys, they freeze her family, they put them in suspended animation, and then they take her, and I believe they leave her daughter Becky conscious as well, and so she also remembers this having happened. They take Betty to some facility underwater. And it's described like it might be in the continental shelf or something like that. And the Greys bring her over to these tall, beautiful, blonde people, these statuesque, people who look like they could be, Olympic athletes or Swedish supermodels. And these like 8-foot tall blonde people tell Betty that they're the angels. And she goes like, are you angels? And they're like, yeah, that's what you people call us. And they tell her that the Greys work for them. And what the Greys do is they basically make recordings of people's lives, which can then be played back to them after they're dead. And the Nordic Archons, who claim to be angels, basically tell Betty that they sent Jesus into the world, that he came from that light in there. She looks through a huge rectangular portal of this light that's streaming out into the facility where she's at. And some of the Greys are floating through this portal and going toward the light. And they tell her, no, you're not ready to go in there. That's God. That's the source. He sent Jesus into the world, and he's going to send him again soon. And then the Greys take Betty to witness basically the extraction of a soul in the hospital and the ferrying of some deceased person into the afterlife realm to be processed. So look, it appears that the afterlife realm is the same realm that's being managed by the so-called alien abductors in the close encounter literature. Another case, or rather another incident that lends weight to this interpretation is a remote viewing that was done by Brett Stewart and a team of 4 remote viewers. And I provide the link for this as a citation in Thanosis, because actually the video of this, of the data from this remote viewing session was so disturbing to people that Brett Stewart took it down from off of his site. But other people subsequently uploaded it. And so in my book, you can find the URL for that. They remote viewed moksha, which is the Sanskrit word for liberation from the cycle of death and rebirth, liberation from samsara. And what these remote viewers came back with is that there's no moksha. That even if you're a super high level yogi, you know, someone who has like worked over lifetimes to refine your consciousness and develop an ability to transcend this mundane plane, there is no way to get out of the earthly realm. There's some kind of machinery beyond the earth that lenses souls back down toward the earth when they're trying to escape. And Brett Stewart, his entire team, of course, you know, as is the case typically with remote viewing, they were blind to the target and they were independently tasked. But their remote viewing data basically lined up, and they all corroborated each other in arriving at the following horrifying picture. They said that millions of years ago, there was a war in this solar system, and that a group of very powerful people who had a colonialist, expansionist, imperialist mindset wanted to use human souls for energy extraction and to basically breed people in order to harvest their psychic energy. And another faction of either another faction of this group or another significantly powerful group of people within our solar system revolted against this. They rebelled against these sort of psychical imperialists or whatever, you know, Loosh-Farmers, right? And the rebels lost the war. And Brett Stewart and his team said basically this war devastated the entire solar system. And I think there's reason to believe that the evidence that Dr. John Brandenburg found for, you know, nuclear bombardment of Mars and, you know, the basically nuclear destruction of the Martian biosphere, which dates back millions of years, is probably a consequence of this war that Brett Stewart and his team are describing. In other words, these people murdered Mars. And what they said is that the rebels lost. The rebels were trying to defend human autonomy and human dignity and self-determination. They seem to basically have had what I would call a Promethean attitude toward the destiny of the human race, and, you know, basically wanted to see humanity pursue an independent course of development and flourish as a species with dignity and independence. And they lost this war, the rebels did. And the team said these rebels are still around, but they're sort of dug in a sort of unfavorable position, and they're kind of waiting for another opportunity to challenge this control system. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. I detail that at the heart of Thanosis.
And I have recently, and I'm saying the last 10 years, come to understand that the reincarnation cycle's been hijacked.
Really?
We are not supposed, they keep us in a loop. We are not, when people say, you're supposed to come back to you, learn all the lessons.
Right.
I do get violent at that in my head only. But no, because you can't learn the lessons here. The deck is stacked against you. I can't learn the lessons when somebody's out, you know, murdering kids on the street, this and that. I don't know what you want me to learn here.
Yeah.
Like, what do you tell the mother of a 3-year-old that's been raped and murdered? Oh, well, it's what they chose, because that's abhorrent and incorrect. It could be, but most likely it's not. It's someone else's decision that impeded on that child and that family.
Wow.
So we keep reincarnating because they get us to commit. Okay, everyone's born with sin. You've heard that, right? We come here and they get us to accept sin. And I don't mean it in the religious sense. They tell us like gambling's okay, porn's okay. And look at the level of porn in school now. Like little kids on the phone looking at, I don't even know what.
OnlyFans, yeah.
Yeah, well, not even that, but I mean the type of porn, like the aggression, the whatever goes on in that. Okay, that wasn't a thing when I was growing up. Like you had to go get a magazine or whatever, if you know, from your parents. You had to go steal it from your parents. But nowadays it's accessible to an 8-year-old, and they can go on the computer, and it just takes one to show another, and on. That's kind of a sickness. So the detachment is to detach from the centered self. When you detach from that and you cross out of your body, let's say you're an alcoholic and you've cheated on your wife your whole life, or you're a woman and you've done the same to your husband, whichever. It's not gender specific, but let's say you've done that and then you cross out of your body, you're going to have guilt and shame. That's how they nab you to come back here.
Right.
You have to work. That's not really how it works. Reincarnation for a certain amount of time, but we're coming back on a like in a Rolodex.
Jeez.
It's too much. It's not the way it is. So I encourage people to try to get their lives straight so that they don't leave with guilt, shame, or fear. Like release your trauma, disconnect from it so that you can make a clear choice without being bullied back here.
Interesting.
That's how I look at it. That's how I'm choosing to live my life. And it's kind of how my son showed me when he passed over. Like, you know, my fear was he'd reincarnate back. I'd die. But I would reincarnate back if I saw him here. See the trap? Like I would literally come right back to be with my child. Obviously. I mean, like in any capacity. That my brain would say, oh, you must do that as a mother. That's how I feel. So we have to learn to stand on our own and understand that we don't have to come back here. There's nicer places to go. This is not one.
So we get to choose Earth?
I believe so. Yeah, I don't. Being bullied by shame and guilt, is that really a conscious choice, or are you just doing it? Like when someone in the army like snaps, you react, right? That's what happens when we cross out. It used to be to reincarnate, to learn, and then you could choose. Do I come back? Do I want to come back with A, B, and C? That part is true, but we're recycling because they need our energy here.
Whoa.
That's what's happening. We're being held in, I call it a plantation Earth, so we're being held hostage.
Interesting. What do you think they're using the energy for?
For them to create themselves. They need to hide. So they're masking. Think about the term narcissist, which is overused to ad nauseum. Everybody's a narcissist. But the idea that they mask themselves, spirits that are non-human or not from the source, like they're from somewhere else. They use our energy to hide behind. That's why money and politics and football games and this and that is also important on this dimension, which is a lower vibration. We're pretty much a couple of rungs up from hell.
Wow.
And I've known that since I was a kid. I was told that as a child.
We're that low?
We're that low. We are not evolved. I laugh at people. They're like, you know, the preachers or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, we're evolved. Bro, you're on this planet with me.
Because that's like a big...
No, you're not.
That's a big movement right now, the 3D to 5D evolution or whatever they're calling it.
Yeah, it is. And we're already living there, but we can't see it because they block the frequency. We exist. I've always been able to astral travel. That's like a genetic kind
While
of...
you're sleeping or just...
No, I can actually do it. Like I can put myself in a position to get out of my physical body. I've always been able to do it. I did it while I was giving birth. I could see behind myself, and I could see my first granddaughter, which I described like, and obviously the baby's not out of me, so I'm not making that up. You know, she exists.
So you saw her spirit before she was in the baby?
Oh yeah, I saw my son handing his dad his first little granddaughter, and she had this like wavy brown hair, and her ethnicity was Hispanic mixed with my son. So I saw her like this, and I saw her toddling up, and I have that picture of her toddling up. And
That's beautiful.
when we met her, I mean, when she came into the world, my husband's like, that's her. And I'm like, that's her. I know that's her. And he's like, that's weird, because I could see it above me, and I was behind me, and I could see it all. So, but that was due to pain because I did a home birth. So I'm ridiculous. But anyway, I have to go to the hospital. Don't trust them.
Well, I don't trust hospital birth.
Yeah. So I did it at home and had my husband and a midwife,
Yeah.
I felt safe. But I saw that. And then with my second son, very strange. I could not get out of my body. I was screaming during labor, I can't get out. I'm feeling it.
Wow.
And I was perturbed. And it was a very different energy, So it was interesting. My first son, I whooshed right out.
Yeah.
Second one, and it was equally as painful, just quicker. But I couldn't get out.